Mhm.
Was I? When you go to the movies and you allow yourself to kind of go on an experience and have an emotional journey, and you laugh and you cry, and you walk out of there going, wow, that was a journey. That is a hypnotic state. And so it's really quite natural, and it's something that we already know how to do. So all hypnosis is self hypnosis essentially. So that's kind of helpful for some people who might be a little bit more skeptical,
Mhm.
for them to know. And it's also really important with whatever hypnotherapist that you work with, that you check with their training, that you check
Mhm.
with, where they learned, and that you feel comfortable with them, because
Mhm.
that's the most important thing, is that you feel
Mhm.
that you're working with somebody who, um, you feel safe and comfortable, and
Mhm.
that's going to allow you to kind of go into that state more easily.
Mhm. I have a problem where I when I have, like, this vision of somebody else's life or just and I just want them to implement something that I feel like it will be good for them or, like, to
Yes.
pursue a business or something. So this is why I had that question because I just wish that everybody would be open to these things, but I know that I can't control
Right.
everybody, so
Yes. Yeah.
but it go ahead.
Well, yes. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, as a therapist and just as a healer, I think, and a healer does not have to be, a form, in a form of a business necessarily.
Mhm.
Just because you're a healer, that doesn't mean you're,
Yeah,
hands on type of thing.
right.
You're a healer if you're just a person who wants to do good in the world and wants to help people. You're a healer. You're a light worker, and your job is to share your light. Your job is to be in your own light, share your own light in whatever ways you want to. And the people who want more, the people who want to learn from you, the people who want to receive what it is, the signal that you're putting out there, they will come to you. And
Mhm.
maybe the people who aren't ready for it yet, you're still going to offer the information in whatever way that you do. And maybe that day they're not available to it,
Mhm.
maybe 6 months later they might be. And it's
Mhm.
really, I think the job of a healer is to try to be neutral about that, and try to kind of trust that everyone is on their own path, everyone is in
Mhm.
different times in their life, and
Mhm.
people are available for things, and we don't always know what's best for everyone. We may think,
Right.
oh, you really should, and I know I'm guilty of this too, but it's like, gosh, they really should be
Yeah.
taking this class. I just know it would be. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't really know.
that's
That
true,
maybe
yeah.
that's not where they're at right now. Maybe something else. So it's kind of learning to release that control, and it's challenging, especially when it's people that you really love and care about.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so that's kind of why I'm, like, so curious, but that makes sense. We don't really know, what's best for everybody, but anyways, if somebody is open to it, I'm glad that they're listening because we're going to open a lot of doors for you for listeners, if they want to be open to it, at least, I think just the thought of the opportunity and potential you have by starting to work on your mindset, I think that that can change your whole life personally. That's something that I really believe in is mindset. So, when I have all these questions or like comments
Yeah.
written down. So,
Sure.
let me see here. So basically I just want to kind of reiterate what you were saying. So, for hypnosis, not only do you have to like be listening to you and do what you're saying, but you have to be open to it yourself. And if you're not working on your mindset and everything, your brain is like lazy, is what I'm hearing. And it'll just kind of defer back to the habits and just what I'm snapping, like the habits of what it is programmed to do. So if you're not actively like trying to make a change or actively trying to address specific habits or thoughts, it's just always going to fall back to this the way your brain is wired. Is that kind of correct?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
and I would add to that we are wired as humans to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And so
Okay.
if your subconscious, if there's not enough associations to the pleasure of the change,
Mhm.
then that change is going to, it's going to, so it's like you try to work out, you want to implement working out, let's say. This is something that I struggle with. To
Mhm.
work out, we have to get motivated to work out. We need to really get associated with why we're
Mhm.
doing it. Why do we want this? What is the pleasure that we're going to get from it?
Mhm.
So really getting associated to that is going to make a big difference, in
Mhm.
how much of a pullback there is, because it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
sure, I'd like to work out, I'd like to have a, a more fit, healthy body, but
Mhm.
my subconscious mind says, yeah, but that's not going to feel good. That's not going to
Right.
be fun. That's going to be inconvenient.
Mhm.
I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be sore, so kind of in hypnosis, well, cognitively first, if I was working with a client like me, it would be to
Mhm.
get very clear on what the benefits of doing that exercise are in the long
Mhm.
run. How is this going to improve your life? And
Mhm.
so that doesn't necessarily only have to happen in hypnosis, because when
Mhm.
somebody is we're either motivated by moving away from pain or towards pleasure, and that can come with or without hypnosis. For example,
Mhm.
you get a scary diagnosis, and it's like, holy shit, I need to change the way I eat. I need to start moving, or I'm not going to live to see my
Mhm.
kids grow up, or whatever it might
Mhm.
be. And that's something that, sometimes we need those wake up calls. But in hypnosis, essentially what we're doing is kind of creating those associations to the pleasure, so that
Mhm.
there's less of that resistance. And
Mhm.
generally when somebody comes to me, they've been working on this for a while, you know um,
Right.
and they know they know that they want this thing, but there's just kind of something holding them back. And so
Right.
usually it's kind of something in them that believes, it's that subconscious mind that's constantly trying to keep you safe. So if it's change, the subconscious mind, if it's not familiar, if it's not something that it knows, it views it as pain, even if it's something that you want. And it's
Right.
crazy, because the subconscious mind is motivated to keep you safe. And so that's why it's so important to be consistent. And so,
Mhm.
like, once I start to work out in a consistent way and kind of get through that hump, I'm going to start to build those pleasure associations. And then
Right.
the subconscious mind is going to start to know it as familiar, and going to start to know it as like, oh, okay, this is just something that we do and it's on autopilot. It's just like
Mhm.
brush your teeth every day.
Right.
Probably when you were a kid and you were learning how to brush your teeth, it was not something that you wanted to do.
Mhm.
Maybe, the first time that you learned how to drive, you had to think about everything, and
Mhm.
it was a little nerve wracking, because there was so many things you had to
Right.
keep in mind. But now it is completely autopilot, and so it's sort of like our subconscious mind will come to accept it once it's associated as safe. And the
Mhm.
way we kind of get to that point is by building up those pleasure associations. Is that
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So when you're working with people or on your own for your own things, you obviously have tools to do that. And I assume because you mentioned affirmations, so I assume that's one thing. Do
Mhm.
you teach like or do you encourage to do tapping? I know like EFT tapping. I've
Yeah.
I've heard of that, and it's funny because I listened to this one. Her name is Haley Hoffman Smith. Do you know who that is by any chance?
Mhm. No.
She's like super into the universe and like breakthrough trainings and all kinds of stuff to help you get to, your best self too. And she talks about a lot of things that you're talking about. And I'm trying to remember the term for it, but there's like it's like what we're talking about basically for just to make it simple.
Mhm.
And she says like sometimes you don't know what that is that's blocking you. Like you're saying maybe we don't even need to know it.
Right.
But for tapping, is that always going to like help you determine what that like limiting belief or issue in your past is? Or like how would you utilize tapping? Because I know just going back to what you said, you don't necessarily need to know what
Right.
that thing is that's holding you back. So yeah, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. I think tapping is really helpful for releasing emotional stress that's held in the body. And it
Mhm.
is helpful for removing blocks um, in a more somatic way. So
Mhm.
I think tapping can work really well with hypnosis, um,
Mhm.
but not everybody is open to it. And I've
Yeah.
had some clients who just, we might try it and they don't like it, or whatever.
Mhm.
But there are some people that it's a really good way to practice self-care. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think of it as this is a way to fix yourself or something like that, but it's a way to love yourself. It's a way
Mhm.
to um, release emotions that are lodged in the body. It's a way to talk yourself through something, and for some people who really hold things in the physical body, it's very effective in doing that. And you can tap on things like, if you're feeling like you have a block, or if you're feeling like you're angry and you don't know what that anger is about, we can kind of tap on those things, and it helps. I don't It's crazy how effective it can be in just sort of unlocking whatever is kind of
Mhm.
lodged in the system, and we don't have to know necessarily what it is. I really believe that when you are meant to know something, you will know something. I believe in the wiseness of your subconscious mind to keep you safe. There are some people who come to hypnosis and they're like, I want to unlock my trauma that happened when I was 5 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
we don't do that. We can work on um, helping build up those neural pathways of feeling safe, and helping calm the nervous system, but we're not going to purposefully go in and open up a trauma that can be really
Mhm.
dangerous. So I believe that if that trauma does open up, if you have a memory that can happen, sometimes if you're doing EFT, or even sometimes in hypnosis, somebody might have something that they realize or remember or something like that, then we deal with it at that point. But we don't purposefully try to do that, because
Yeah.
it's a memory that's lodged in there. It's lodged in there for a reason. And so
Right.
it's kind of like EFT is something that you can work with to help you deal with whatever it is that's coming up for you in that moment. And it's a really
Mhm.
beautiful, effective practice. And I use it not with all my clients, but some of them. And for some, it's really works really well. And I use it on
Mhm.
myself as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's just another tool that people can look into. It's definitely something more on like the really like I can see people not like getting it, but I know that it's worked for people and I haven't actually done it. But what I was going to say before I forgot to mention is yesterday I was talking to somebody about her OCD
Hmm.
and she's actually going to be on the podcast. So we were talking about how her therapist does tapping with her, and I think she does it on her collarbones,
Uh huh.
or maybe does that make sense? The collarbones,
Yeah, there's
and
2 points right here. It's right under the
I
collarbone. There's kind of like a little divot. It's
okay, yeah, that's I was
collarbone.
just surprised that it was introduced in therapy. I don't know. I thought it was more like something that isn't used in therapy and stuff like that. So if somebody was interested in that, would that be a good place to start? Just like right here? What would that be for? Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So tapping, what you're essentially doing, if you are familiar at all with acupuncture, it's
Mhm.
kind of like acupuncture without the needles. You're
Oh,
working with meridian points. And so
okay.
I'm not an expert on meridian points here, so I'll
Mhm.
explain the best I can. But basically you have kind of these points, these energy centers, these energy points that kind of all connect to different things. So from a Chinese medicine point of view, different points, when they're put the needles in, they connect to different points in your body. So there may be a needle for digestion, or there may be a needle point for anxiety, or there may be a needle point for your liver. And so kind of what we're doing with the tapping is utilizing those points. And
Okay.
so a good place to start, I do have I have a Change Your Life starter pack.